Hello, everyone. My name is Leo Sosa. I'm the founder and executive director for Dev Mission. And today, on our Inside Dev Mission, we have the pleasure of having such a wonderful person that's going to give us a sense of his role with this organization. So let's get right into it. How you doing this morning, Abraham?
Yeah, so my name is Abraham Velasquez, and I'm part of the one of the board members of Dev Mission. I've been around with the organization since its inception, almost three some odd years ago. So yeah, I got a chance to get to know you specifically through as working with Dropbox because I'm an engineering manager there. They connected us through two other nonprofits, and specifically with the nonprofit that you were previously working at. And one of the reasons that I was asked to be connected is because I was a Latino in tech and I spoke Spanish, and it was really helping and partnering to help Latino youth kind of learn about different careers in tech. So I remember I was a part of a panel, and you interviewed me. And we became pretty good friends after that. And then once I really learned about all the programs and that you ran and all the work that you had planned for the future, I very much bought into your vision and your ideas in terms of how the youth can be affected here in San Francisco, and we can have a positive impact.
Great. I still remember some of those conversations we had before, and it's amazing to see that almost after 3.5 years, we're still thinking about bigger ideas to connect more young people to careers in tech. So thank you for sharing that. So away from how do we get in, to me and how you started getting excited about the work that we were doing, being a board member, I know sometimes could be challenging, but away from that, can you please tell us, how do you get involved with the organization and what you've been doing since the beginning away from your
Sure.
role as the chair and the board member?
Sure. So I think the part where I was able to bring some of my expertise in as a software engineer was that initially a large amount of the programs that you were working on focused very much on IT, which is very fantastic and a very critical piece for young folks to understand in terms of like being able to fix computers, the actual physical computers, being able to repair them, and help out the community in that kind of way, because being solid IT support and helping community members is pretty critical. But I did also see that, hey, maybe there's an opportunity for us to specifically start teaching programming. And web development is something that's pretty straightforward in terms of how to the tooling's really needed for that is really just a computer, a web browser at the end of the day. It's really about knowing the applications and the little bits of software and what websites to use. And then from there, the idea grew to start creating a third leg of the curriculum. That one was obviously focused in like helping some of the professional skills, another one in the IT skills, but then also having like a software component to it made a perfect amount of balance for the new program specifically at Dev Mission. So from there, I helped develop some of the curriculums. There were already some folks that were kind of teaching parts of it as well, but really breaking down some of the basics. And I set up some of the initial like PowerPoint or like decks and stuff like that. And then created like a sample application of what is like the entire process top to bottom that a student would create. And we got to leverage pretty cutting edge stuff in terms of just like modern JavaScript, but then also like Airtable to actually teach them a little bit about the concept of a database. And from there, I've actually been quite impressed, because every single time that I join a cohort for either one of the presentations or that I get a chance to help out with individual ones, the ideas are just there. They're totally different ideas and unique kind of to the students. And it's quite lovely and fantastic just to see like how a simple food taco truck tracking application takes off and becomes something, like resources for the community or in helping others and things like that.
Yes, very exciting to hear that not only away from your role as the board member, you have also contributed to the competencies of our ICT sector training program. And it's been amazing to see that journey along with you to young people building web apps about gardening, health, best taquerias in town. And it just gives them a different level of ownership that they build something from scratch. So we're really, really excited to see what else is going to happen down the road with your support. So we appreciate the amount of work you have done as well, away from the board member, also like a volunteer. So we ask everyone out there to see an example of how you can make an impact with the program like Dev Mission or others. Can you please tell everyone out there, how did you get your career in tech?
Yeah, if you go back to pretty early on, I fell in love with computers by visiting the public school library when I was a kid in middle school and early high school. That was the first time I really got a chance to play around with computers and try to understand. There was also like a youth center that I attended. It was the first time I was like trying to use like Windows 3.1. Like I just remember being like, oh my God, these things have games. This is so cool. So through that, I just said, okay, I want to learn how to use these things. My mom helped me save up money. I mowed some lawns and was able to eventually get a computer throughout high school. And that really was the key to everything. Having that physical device, frankly, in my room is really what opened up so many possibilities that I just spent all, nights and nights and nights. And from there, I eventually learned how to, I volunteered with a local church that I attended, and I said, hey, I can help you guys probably put together a website, because they were looking for someone that knew those things. I said, well, I don't know them, but I want to learn them so I can help. And from there on, I just started learning about the basics of web development and things like that. And that really opened up a path for me in a couple different ways. One, that I was able to actually start volunteering with my school as well. I would have one of my classes in high school. And instead of attending the class, they gave me like a free pass. And I said, okay, you go help and be tech support for the rest of the teachers. So from there on, it really opened up my eyes in terms of like a lot of the possibilities that were there. If I wasn't in the computer lab, I was in the art room between these two things. And I eventually decided to specifically pursue a degree in graphic design. I really wanted to focus on the visual and the aesthetics. And at the time, web development was like barely this concept and this idea. JavaScript was barely even around as a language. It was pretty much born around the same time. And I just decided to really understand web development more as a whole and to pursue graphic design. So I attended an art school. I kept doing that stuff on my own, and eventually got like a job at an internship during school, building websites for law firms and all these other companies. And then I would also volunteer actually with other nonprofits and say, hey, you probably need help building a website, so I can just do this. I can learn on my own and help you doing that stuff. So it's always been really important to get involved with different organizations, because at the end of the day, just this concept that technology can be available to anyone, and such a simple tool that's accessible as buying a domain name for $10 a month, a year, like that just opens up a huge amount of doors. The rest of it is practically free with the server cost. So from there on, I just kept going and going, and one job led to another. I started working in advertising agencies. And then after quite some time, after working in Chicago, Apple took a look at my work online, and they reached out and said, hey, would you be interested in coming to interview with us out here in Silicon Valley? And to me, it was just like a dream come true, to be honest. I was always, the kid standing in line for iPhones and iPads and stuff like that. So the fact that someone had reached out, I think, was really inspiring from that perspective. And I said, okay, yeah, I got it. It's nerve-wracking, but I really got to go for this. So I applied for a couple different positions. One of them, they decided to make me an offer, and they said, hey, can you relocate to the Bay Area? And I said, sure, yeah, I guess. I mean, this is what I got to do. So, my wife graciously agreed, like, hey, okay, this is probably a really good step for us in our life, right? To move away from Chicago and to come to the Bay Area. So we ended up living in San Francisco, and I worked there for 3 years, doing some of the best work that I ever did in my life. I just loved it. It's incredibly passionate. But then I wanted a very different change of pace in terms of the type of company that I was working for, something that was much smaller. And then I applied through a friend to work at Dropbox and became a web developer there, and software engineer, and now engineering manager. So I've been there for almost 4 years.
What a great journey. And it's amazing to hear, Abraham, that sometimes that little spark, when you help someone, it creates a huge responsibility to do that, not just for your community, but now you're doing it for this next generation of tech talent, which are the young people that are still trying to figure out what type of tech career they like to pursue. So you're an inspiration for our organization, and I always love to hear your story, no matter what. So along those lines, Abraham, we have a lot of young people from different backgrounds we serve. everyone in San Francisco and beyond the Bay Area. And as you know, right now with our virtual distance learning program, we're now able to get some young people out of the state. So I'm pretty sure some of them will be watching this video, and also a partner, funder, sponsors, but other young people out there that might not just know what the career path is about. So can you give them an insight, or what type of advice would you provide to them so they can think about getting into a career in tech?
Yeah, there's honestly two pretty critical parts and components to this. One is very much about yourself and understanding what you love and frankly don't love sometimes, and really finding what is potentially a spark of a passion for you and dedicating your time and energy. Hopefully having the space. I understand life is complicated for a lot of folks, but hopefully having that time and space to dedicate to your craft and getting better and better, and knowing that you can always be better at it. Self-growth is pretty critical. But then the other component is very much about making the right connections and relationships, friendships. You'd be surprised, right? If I hadn't volunteered for that one event, I wouldn't have gotten the opportunity to meet you, and then from there on become a board member. So you just really have to trust in your friendships and relationships to be that guiding support. And that goes for, again, maybe people that you look up to, but something that I always tried to do in college is, if a class was going on, I always like immediately recognized who was like the top person in the class, who was like the great designer, who had like really great experience programming, who was like the most dedicated individual. And I frankly just started to befriend those people. I started to get to know them, and really not just because I wanted to learn from them, but because I also admired their work. So similar in a job, right? When you are fortunate enough to get a job in any place, you really have to gravitate towards people that believe in themselves, that have this talent and this passion to grow themselves, because then that energy really rubs off on you, right? And often what happens is, people will start collaborating together. I think some of my best work in college was when I collaborated with some of those pretty sharp and talented people, and then we got ideas together and we kind of moved, learned from each other in those ways. So it's very much about self-growth, but then also immediately like grabbing on and learning from others that you find inspiring.
Great advice for all the young people out there, and also anyone that's thinking about pursuing a career in the tech industry. So you kind of mentioned a little bit about what is the advice, but at the same time, we know that a lot of young people and other folks out there need to have certain strengths to pursue those careers in the tech industry, and even a young developer or an IT professional. So based on your experience, what are some of those strengths that, companies like Dropbox and Apple have looked into these young people to make sure they bring to the table when they are being interviewed for a position within those companies?
Yeah, I think, look, all companies have different problems and greatnesses about how they hire folks. I disagree with even some of the hiring practices that we have at Dropbox or that I've had at Apple that I experience. There's never one key thing that all of these individual companies look for, because at the end of the day, when you're applying for an individual company, it's very much about how do you fit into that role. Do they have 100% confidence that when they hire you, you will be able to do exactly what they ask you to do? And that's a bit of a challenge because not all folks have that individual background or experience. But there are certain qualities of an individual that can get you that expertise and that type of experience. And I think something that's incredibly critical and often a little bit tricky for folks to really get is a huge amount of attention to detail. I remember, especially when I was learning to code on my own, and then I would work with friends and I taught workshops on WordPress development, things like that. Folks would comment on like how like attention to detail oriented I was, and how much every little bit mattered to me. And when I got to Apple, that was like all of a sudden everyone was like that, and sometimes 10 times more, right? So even I was humbled from that particular experience. So you really have to have love for your craft and the quality of your craft. Another thing that's also quite helpful is just, again, just your relationship with other people, just having a great amount of respect. Something as simple as showing up on time makes a lot of difference, because, you know, these little things, they add up to really positive interactions over time. But at the end of the day, again, when someone is going to hire you and offer you that position, is because they are 100% confident that you are going to be able to do the job they want you to do. Now, there are things that the tech industry do need to do, because again, not all these people have the experience. So they need to provide the right mentorship programs and structure for someone to join. They need to create more junior positions that are open, right? As opposed to only asking for senior positions. There's a lot of things that the tech industry needs to do, but at the very least, we ourselves can make sure we're prepared when those opportunities do come up.
Great insight. I'm pretty sure everyone out there is enjoying this conversation. I want to also ask you, and you've been involved in the nonprofit sector for quite some time. I know you and I worked for another nonprofit before, decided to start Deaf Mission together with other technologists that are not on this video, but eventually we'll bring them in. What makes, you know, Deaf Mission so different for you, and away from just what makes Deaf Mission so different, why you want to continue supporting this organization? And I know you have been a donor, you've been a volunteer, you've been a sponsor, and you're really creating pathways for more young people.
Yeah, look, I think all of the tech industry has a responsibility, um, to call into effect, really understand the change, the impact that we've had both in San Francisco, and now I myself live in Oakland, and I see the changes that it's happening, right? Like I literally, me moving to my neighborhood in Fruitvale is me creating a change, hopefully a positive one in the long run, but it is something that is very different for folks to kind of get used to from that perspective. Change is difficult and it's challenging. So I think we have a responsibility to help our communities, help them, right? As help them help themselves in a way. And there's just, I think Deaf Mission has the right amount of skills. It's reaching the right students at the right time. This like critical 16 to 24-year-old age is a time when folks are really trying to understand what their job is. Sometimes maybe the school system didn't do what it should have for them. Sometimes, unfortunately, family issues, you know, frankly, legal or immigration issues. Like the world puts on so many challenges to these young adults. I've had my share of challenges, and if not for the strength and perseverance of like my mother and a couple other friends that have helped me along the way, I would have been in very similar situations, right? And I have been in many cases. So I see this with, you know, kids down the block, that there's no reason they shouldn't have the opportunities that I had. And that really is the core of it. You know, when all these companies hire, they're hiring from the top elite schools like MIT and Stanford and UC Berkeley. And that's great, because frankly, those kids, they worked their butts off, they deserved it. But all of a sudden you are dependent on the system being fair and being accurate, which we all know that it's not. So there are plenty of people that need those opportunities as well. And Dev Mission and a few other programs around here really are the ones who can help elevate them. Now the challenge is, okay, now we can get students in our door. How can we teach them the right skills, right, to actually be prepared and be prepared in the right way for an apprenticeship or for an internship or for all these like positions? Because just getting them in the door isn't enough. You really have to teach them the skills that they need.
Great. Appreciate also your support to this organization. And I always come out of the cuts with another question. So I want to ask you, what gets you up in the morning, Abraham? And really, what does that mean in respect of now working remotely from home, but also you still got to have the same passion to deliver the work and be productive. So tell the audience what gets you up in the morning and what your day looks like when you work at Dropbox.
You know, I think the answer to that question has changed drastically, not only since work from home, but also in the past couple of years for me. I have a young daughter. She's 16 months old now. And that really now every day is that passion for me to get up and you know, do work and then also be able to spend time with her. I learned something quite amazing by able to spend so much time with my daughter. of early childhood education and how incredibly important that is for individuals, really understanding the process in terms of how they learn to grow. Something as simple as like first learning as a baby to roll over, to then being able to like lift themselves up, and that staircase that they have to go through to eventually walk, right? Like that's an ultimately a fortunate skill that hopefully most kids are able to experience. But you have to understand that progression and that development. That really sparked a huge amount of passion in me for, it really reinvigorated me in terms of becoming a manager. My core job as a manager is really to help each individual grow and be the best that they can be. Give them the space to learn, give them the support and tooling and resources that they can to kind of go to day. So working from home recently is really just waking up in the morning, enjoying breakfast with my daughter, coming into my desk, which is also my bedroom now. But my favorite part of it is just those one-on-one conversations that I get to have with every engineer on my team, and understanding, how did you do? How can I help? What was tricky? What was great? Right? And then having these meetings together, and like the process of Agile and Scrum, and like saying, hey, how can we be better as a team? These are conversations that I love to have and learn and kind of get all these different perspectives. So yeah, it's mostly just in front of the same desk and chair that I am now. But while it is tricky and we do miss these like physical relationships, to be able to see and hang out with each other and spend time together, just go get a burger together, you do miss those like bits of connection. But at the end of the day, I think we'll be able to kind of get through this. From that perspective, a lot of these jobs can frankly just be done remote. So it's going to have a long-lasting impact in terms of the industry, in terms of how these companies, these office buildings, and everything is fully set up.
We're wrapping up our interview today. It's been a great pleasure to learn more about yourself, about the work that you do at Dropbox, your personal situation with your family, and we're so thankful that you still continue to support Dev Mission to build that infrastructure for the organization. And we're very thankful as well that you have given so much time and so many hours to this organization to build these young people, this pipeline that's coming and becoming the next generation of tech talent. So again, we want to thank you. And for everyone out there, stay tuned for another personality from Dev Mission to pop up within our Inside Dev Mission video series. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leo. Have a great day, everybody.